Oh,
I was like, what is that?
am I good?
There,
Well, it doubles in the detail.
yeah. It's
Okay.
driving me a little bit bonkers. Yeah, I want to be on it.
Maybe you can take straight his head up.
As long as they're not in the shot up there.
Well, he's going to zoom in a little bit more.
Yeah.
It gets,
Oh my gosh.
So it's just your light.
I think anywhere, no.
Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Check microphone check. 1 1 2. Check 1 2. Yeah, on the check 1 2. Yeah. Yeah, but on the actual mic or on the receiver. Check 1 2. Bring it down. Check 1 2. That's what you're talking about, right? Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Yeah. Nigel's taking it down a little bit over here. Check 1 2. Microphone check. 1 2 3 4 5 6.
And they're public, I didn't talk to you loud.
No, that's not right. I got loud voice. Can I get something real quick? Just so I can check my ear. No, I was gonna check my real quick.
Oh, you want to go check it?
Yeah, please. Actually, you're pretty clear.
Test 1 2, test 1 2.
Hit it again.
2, test 1 2.
Is it a green light?
Test 1 2, test 1 2, test,
There
test,
it is.
test.
Good.
Test.
One more time, sir.
Test 1 2, test 1 1 1 1.
Thank you.
Everyone's good on white balance?
We're good.
I'll be giving it to them. What's up, man? How are you? And you? Good. What's up, Mario? Did I just see you? He does. He did very well. I was just, yeah, I was that way. I was a Tammy actually. That's because I'm Tammy. I did all this stuff. I was a reporter, I was producer. These were all, I went to the cabinet meetings. But I was really frustrated. I was doing, no, it's not as glamorous. But it's fun, but it's hours and hours. So, but Tammy was like, I met Tammy when she was reporting. So she was, and when she left, whatever, and I had some she just called me up. Sure. Will you be doing trash collection? I'm like, cool. So I applied, and yeah. I didn't think because it was like a 2-month delay. I thought, nah, I forgot. She called me, get an interview, and I got on board. So I was helping her for a couple of months, and Julia, if you remember Julia, she was like, we need some help over here. And she had noticed that I was doing, wanted to bring like Tommy didn't want me to go. Tommy was like, don't go, stay, I want you here, blah, blah. But then she's like, I'm not gonna stop you. It's a better opportunity. So, yeah.
Just trying to do the airport.
Yeah. That's a good thing about Tammy, yeah. That's why I always help Tammy out, because I know she's helped me out a lot, so I always help her out. Just getting out. Yeah, I played champion. I won with us on the holiday side.
I applied for,
So I don't know if you're still like this now, but like, this
hey, sir, do you have a white house?
I didn't take it off.
Oh,
and it's fine. It's fine. And I told Joe, things didn't work out. And he's like, you can always say you're here. Did you turn on the mic? To turn it on, you just press it.
Yeah, it should be on. Is it connected?
All right, good morning, everyone. And I want to thank you all for being here. I think we have a lot of things to share with you all and some of the great things that the city's been doing. As you all know, that we have a crisis on our hands, and we've been really working together with our partners, whether it's the federal government, the county, and one of the things that we've said from the beginning, that this is bigger than just El Paso. This is a thing that the United States, and now it's really become bigger than just the United States. It's really become a worldwide concern, and we had Secretary Mayorkas here on a couple of days ago, and we talked about the needs for the community, and I'm very thankful that to see that he's been listening. And he did yesterday, as was reported, that from him working with us and working with FEMA, they've committed to giving the city $6 million additional funding up front. We did receive 3.7 from third quarter, and we're still working on fourth quarter money that we've not submitted for reimbursement. Chief D'Agostino has all the numbers, and he'll be able to go through all the numbers and some of the things that we've been doing. I know that there's been a lot of concern of safe street releases, and safe street releases are really, in our opinion, and the chief and I talk about it, the people that have been released into the community, and we want to make sure that they are safe. And I know that you'll see when they are released, there's a lot of people out there, but as the night goes on, the city of El Paso and OEM has sent city buses to pick them up, take them to shelters, take them to hotels to make sure they're not out there. If you still see, you'll see, and last night I was out there, again late last night, I've been every day out there to see what's going on, and you'll see that there are some people out there, and we've talked to them, we've asked them to get on the bus, to go on the bus so we can provide shelter for them. Some of these want to stay out there, and some of them say they're waiting for family members to come over. But it's been one of the things that's been really important, that we don't want to see people out on the street. It's been something that's been very important to us. We've seen the pictures when they do get off and they're out there in the street, but if you come back during the night, like I do, you'll see that they're not on the street any longer, that the ones that we were able to ask to get on the bus and give them shelter. We've seen the people out at the airport, and those people have airplane tickets, and they have tickets where they'll be going to their destinations. Those tickets are bought by them or their sponsors. They're not bought by the city, and those people are going to the next destination, and I do go in there and they do check and they make sure, and they help them to make sure. A lot of those are leaving early in the morning. By 9, 10 o'clock at night, you'll see most of them have gotten on the airplane, and they've gotten, a lot of them come because we've had some great support from our neighbors in Las Cruces, and they'll bring them the night before because they do have early flights. So the city's making sure that people are taken care of. We're again thankful for Secretary Mayorkas that's really worked to make sure that we have the funding now. As I've said before, and I'll continue to say it today, this funding and sheltering is not the answer. It's a Band-Aid to a bigger problem. And it's really important for us that we continue to work with our federal governments to see how they can come up with a permanent solution, because you can't, we've said that you're not going to fund yourself out of this, you're not going to house yourself out of this. It's something that we're going to have to work with the UN and other countries to work through a situation that, again, is bigger than El Paso, and now it's become bigger than the United States. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief D'Agostino, and then we'll allow Mr. Gonzalez is up here if he'd like to speak, and then I'll come back in a few minutes. Thank you, Chief. And before I do want to thank Representative Rodriguez, Representative Salcido, and Representative Molinar for being here. It's been very important. I know, and I'll say one more thing. I know that we've talked about that if we were to issue a state of emergency, that we would get additional federal funding, and you've seen that, or state funding. That's one of the things that by staying with the course that we did, we were able to get the funding without having to do that, and we'll continue to work. I know that, and Chief D'Agostino, I think we'll talk about, we've been working with Senator Blanco, where we can get some assistance from the state, again, without having to do something like that. Chief? Sorry about that.
Very good. Thank you. Good morning. And so, talking about the overall picture, what do we know right now? We've been well over 2,500 apprehensions with Border Patrol over the past 7 days. That's a daily number. Our local community is seeing 1,200 releases, and that's to the NGOs, that's the county's processing center, and all the separate little churches and individuals who are housing them. That does not include the 200 to 500 street releases that are being done every day. So that takes our true daily total here in El Paso around 1,700 a day. That's a large influx from what we've seen in previous surges in migration. With that, we continue our planning. We've talked about the need for increased processing. We've talked about the supplemental transportation, and I'll get a little bit more in depth in that. And then we've talked about emergency sheltering. And so when you look at emergency sheltering and what people look at when you put up cots in a warehouse, a large facility, and you have multiple people staying in one area, that is more short-term sheltering operations. That's for a natural disaster. Say there's a hurricane, a bad storm coming through, and so they relocate people. They give them a place to stay during that temporary pass. It's a short period. It's 5 to 7 days. Usually they're wrapping up, they're moving them back on into hotel systems or with family, or moving them on to other destinations. This is different. Migrations are passing through. We all know that. The city of El Paso, the Paseo del Norte, it is that path into the country. And so just talking to them, they're not wanting to stay in this region. And so they are passing through. So that increase in processing capacity is to help with these numbers. When you have that many people daily coming into the city of El Paso, they're looking for a transportation out of the city of El Paso. We know we're limited in our resources. We have our airport. It has a limited number of available flights on a daily basis. We have a couple of bus transportation companies. They also have limited seating. So when you start looking at these high numbers and what Title 42 might bring us when it is taken away, that'll add to these numbers. We're seeing a large influx of people already moving up through Mexico and arriving in Juarez. We've seen the caravans that arrived this past weekend. That's a large number of people preparing to cross through. So with that, we're looking at that supplemental transportation. And what I mean by that is getting them to the next point so we can process them here, get them their travel arrangements made out of a larger hub. And so with that, that might bring in transportation in forms of buses to get them to that transportation hub, whether it's Dallas or Denver or Phoenix or whatever that next large airport or bus terminal is, it's to move them onto those locations. The emergency sheltering, as you know, we've utilized hotels in the past. That is our process to do it. It's a lot easier to maintain. It gives that separation. We actually have hotel operations in effect this week. We've had cold weather. You've all seen people on the streets. We're doing our due diligence. We have our Office of Emergency Management teams, our roving teams, going out into the community, locating them, the migrants, and asking what kind of services they need, whether they need that help with the transportation piece. And there's been a lot of that on the fly, on the go, walking on the sidewalk. Yes, I'm trying to get a bus ticket to here. And so they'll actually help them and assist them to get that done. Like the mayor said, they have sponsors, they have a means to pay for that travel. We're just helping connect them. Then it goes down to, if they're not getting that same day transportation, we're offering them that hotel stay. That's to get them out of the elements, get them out of the streets, and put everyone in a safer environment. There is a large portion of them who don't want that assistance, and we understand that. And they don't have to take that assistance. They're free to roam as they please, let's say. And so with that, we're still seeing some that are staying out overnight, but that's by choice. We don't like to see it. We prefer that they get indoors, they get into a warm location, whether it's one of the shelter locations or one of the hotel operations that the city's running. We talk about the community releases. We talked about the daily totals. It's climbing. Title 42, it's unknown. We talked to our federal partners, our state partners, and the entire region, everybody who's been in this migration sense for just years, decades. What do they anticipate? The numbers are broad ranged. We're already seeing 2,500 apprehensions a day. We're hearing upwards of 5,000 a day. If we're getting 2,500 apprehensions a day and we're talking about 1,600 street releases, that number doubles. You're not sending the Title 42s because that's no longer in place. That number is going to increase. And so we understand that there, as the mayor talked about earlier, there is not enough funding and there's not enough shelters you can build to just handle it all right here. We have to rely on our partners throughout the nation. And that's where that comes into that piece of connecting them through other transportation hubs. Looking at the funding that we have expended this year for as far as migrant operations, the city's expended $9.52 million. Out of that, we did receive our first and second quarter, which is roughly about $237,000. We did receive that back. We have received some upfront funding of $2 million back in October. We did get word this week that we would be getting that they have identified the funding to reimburse us, the 3.7 out of the 5.2 million we submitted for reimbursement in the third quarter. And then just yesterday, we did receive notification that we'll be getting another $6 million for advanced funding going forward. So with that, we don't have all the funds in the bank. The only ones we can talk about is the first and second quarter of $237,000 and the $2 million upfront that we did receive in mid-October. So those are in the bank. We're waiting on the other ones. It's promising that the word we're getting, that we're going to get it. We're going to get reimbursement. They're still looking for other funds to continue reimbursing that third quarter. As I said, if it's only 3.7 out of the 5.28 that we did expend, but we continue to work that process. With that funding, there's talks. It's not in the bank yet, but we understand the need and what's here. It's Title 42 going away. We don't know the status. There's been some stays. No one understands exactly what's going to happen, but we know we're days away. So with that, we're also not declaring a state of emergency, but we are requesting state resources. And those resources that we are requesting comes in the form of transportation support, just as I talked about right now. We have to get them moved from here to the next transportation hub, and that's the kind of operations we're looking at. Now, what we saw in September and October, that influx of Venezuelan population, Title 42 has stopped that. So what we're seeing right now is everyone is sponsored. The vast majority are sponsored. They have a means to get to where they're going. Title 42 goes away on the 21st. We can imagine all the Venezuelans who are still over in Juarez or making their journey this way are going to pass through. We might have to do some of the operations that we did back in September, October, and that's to help them connect to the destination they're looking for. Like we said, the Paseo del Norte, they're passing through our community. We want to make sure they can get to where they're going, but if they don't have a means, we just don't have the capacity to house long-term until they can find the means. So we're going to help them connect at that point, just so we don't overflow the system here in El Paso. The next ask from the state is for personnel staffing support. And that'll be in the form of feeding operations, processing, and to include sheltering. These are all just requests, as I said. And our third piece of the request will be for law enforcement support. Reason being, we do know that Customs and Border Patrol, the OFO, they are looking at doing other ways of processing with Title 42 going away. They're looking at doing processing directly at the PDN bridge. They're looking at pulling personnel from the other bridges and focusing on processing of the migrants passing through. With that, that's going to have people being processed right there at the Paso del Norte bridge and then walking over and being released right there into the streets. We know there's going to be a lot. Our police, our fire departments, we're already taxed. We know we're short-staffed. We have a job. We have to protect the entire city. So we're asking for that additional support to keep the community, the migrants, safe, as we don't want them just wandering downtown with that effort. So that's what we're looking to ask for from the state of Texas. And with that,
Thank you, Chief. And you know, some of the numbers that we've been looking at right now is 2,500 a day. So you do a quick math of that, and that's 75,000 in a month period coming through our borders. Now, when they talked about the Title 42 being lifted, there are numbers that being looked at that they think that it'll go up to about 5,000. You look at 5,000, that's 150,000 coming through in a single month, and that's where, you know, the federal government and the state will need to help us. Again, declaring a state of emergency to me was not an option. To be able to work with our partners was a great option, and I think we all see it's really working the way it needed to work, and our partners have really stepped up. Senator Blanco has been very instrumental, and so has the chief, working with state officials as they reached out to talk to them, and they did tell us we didn't need to do a state of emergency for us to be able to get some of the resources and help that's required for the city. So that's important. Again, I do thank our partners. I think the county is doing an incredible job. Judge Samniego and his staff is really, you know, everybody has to have a different part in this to be able to do it together. And I can tell you that the judge and his staff has done a really good job of coordinating the processing center and working with the diocese and continue to do that. So that is, we all have a different part in it. As long as we all continue to work together, it's going to be able to work. You know, when we start going apart and you know, and not working together, it's when things stop working. So I'm very thankful that as a whole, we all are, you know, speaking, you know, the same language. We're all on the same page, and we'll continue to be that. Now, is this very strenuous on a lot of the resources and the city resources and the county resources? Absolutely. But again, we are a city, and we are a border city that has some responsibilities. And I can tell you the city manager and his staff has stepped up to do those responsibilities and continue to work hard within the community to get it handled. So with that, we can take one question only. And it won't be you, Mr. Moore. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Moore. Hold on 1 second. Bob Moore, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm wondering if you can, this may be more toward Chief D'Agostino, but can you provide a breakdown of how you plan to spend that $6 million from the feds? And you're talking about transportation to move people on to the next hub or whatever. Is the city looking at resuming chartering? So could you give us a better idea of how you're going to spend that $6 million allotment that came in this week?
Go ahead, Chief.
So as we've talked about for a long time now, it's a dynamic situation. It changes on the daily. And so right now, when I talked about transportation, I'm looking at from what we're seeing today. If we can't keep up with the transportation out of town, then those charters are to the hub transportation areas to get them onto their final destination. So they're shorter term trips, a lot less than driving cross country to taking them. As we saw last time, the vast majority chose to go to New York. The next location was Chicago. It's not taking them that far. It's getting them to that next transportation hub where we can make sure that we can secure their travel. They can secure their travel because they do have the funds for that out of that city. And then what will connect them is that simple piece of the chartering from here to that next airport or that next bus terminal. So that's the form of that. With Title
Let me also, one thing that's really important. Today we have a lot of people that are sponsored and they have their own money, and we're helping them go get tickets at the airport and all. Now if you end up getting people that, if the dynamics change like it did a while back and they're non-sponsored, then of course our responsibility will continue to change. And that's what the chief is talking about, that it changes daily. Today, where we're at today, most of them are sponsored. When Title 42 goes away, we anticipate something changing, and we need to be prepared.
Thank you. That was my wrap up to that is yes, if Title 42 goes away, we could anticipate seeing the unsponsored population come back in, and we might have to look at those operations. Like I said, it changes daily. The money is going to be utilized for food, for shelter, for transportation, security, and all the logistics that go with that.
Hi there. And then just a few days ago, you were recommending that a state of emergency be declared. What kind of changed your tone? What changed your mind on that recommendation? Nothing's changed my mind or my tone. I did ask to declare an emergency, and it's because we're seeing these sheer numbers. It's a large task. As the mayor mentioned, our city staff is tasked. Our county staff is tasked. Let's look at a broader nature. CBP is tasked. They're working long hours, day and night. They're doing processing rather than their primary function of securing the border. So everyone is tasked in this area, and for those are the reasons why I recommend declaring an emergency. What we did find out yesterday, what changes in working with Senator Blanco's office, he was able to coordinate those communications, and we can still ask for requests from the state. Usually that's reserved for in a declaration. That's why I was asking for a declaration. They've allowed us to put those asks in now. Now, because it's not a declaration, I have been told if they don't have a funding stream that's already providing that type of support, we're probably not going to get that assistance. And we understand that. But I want to make sure the requests are there. I want to make sure the El Paso community is there, aware of it. And I want to make sure that our staff is protected. And so I'm asking for those resources. Why? Because we can't continue to work at this extreme pace and with an unforeseeable future.
Let me just add one thing to that. So we've been working with our staff, since late 2018. And throughout that entire process, we've had other things that have come up, like COVID, the August 3rd hate crime, and then immigration again. And each of those times we follow a process. And that process includes that if we need to declare, that we take that to the council in order for that to take place. And the only person that can do that in this case is the mayor and or the county judge. With respect to what we're doing today and what the chief talked about and what the mayor's talked about, we're focused on being prepared so that if it is lifted, Title 42 is lifted, that we do have the food, the sheltering, the transportation in place in order to move those people quickly. So that's been our primary objective.
And I think right now, as we see, there are some lawsuits that have been filed by the federal government, by the Biden administration, that may keep Title 42 intact for a little bit longer. We're not quite sure, but I can tell you the only thing that I am 100% sure today, that we'll be prepared on December 21st, that if it is lifted, the community in the city of El Paso will be prepared. Next question.
Over here. You didn't mention any specific organizations, but the Attorney General says he wants to, the governor wants the Attorney General's office to investigate nonprofits here in El Paso over these allegations that some of them are helping people cross the border. Do you think that that is going to impact your all's approach and ability to provide shelter for a lot of these arrivals? And also, how does that impact your all's ability, if you're working with these organizations to shelter these people, if you're going to be asking for state resources?
I think that you answered your question. Those were allegations. And, you know, we'll continue to work with all the organizations within the community to make sure that everyone's safe, and that, and we do have some great NGOs, and again, the diocese is working within the county, and, you know, we'll continue to work with everyone. You know, you don't react to allegations, you continue to work with your partners.
Martha Piskowski with the El Paso Times. Can you clarify the point you mentioned about the bridges being used for processing, and what has the city been informed of up to this point about how that processing will take place, especially on the city-owned bridges?
So what the OFO has discussed with us is that they want to start increasing their capacity to do processing of migrants passing through the community right here at the PDN bridge. What that's going to do is it's going to pull resources from other bridges. They're looking at the possibility of having to detour cargo out of the Bridge of the Americas, moving it out to Isleta, moving it to Sunland Park or Santa Teresa ports. And so that way they can have their staff concentrated on processing. So with that, what could we expect? I mean, logically, we think about it, there's going to be longer wait times. It's going to be that delay in just the daily border traffic that we have as a border community. That also means as they process, those who can be processed and released will be released right there at the PDN bridge. So that's why some of those state requests and everything else was looking for that.
Hi. One of the basic needs that the migrants on the streets don't currently have access to is restrooms. I'm wondering if the city, why the city hasn't put out any more portable restrooms, and are there plans to do so?
You know, I think that's important, and that's why we want to take them. We don't want them on the street. We want to make sure they're off the street. That's why the city and the chief is providing transportation to get them off the street. That it's important. Go ahead, Chief.
We do have porta potties out there. This morning they're putting up wash stations as well. It's the same operation we had back in September, October. We're making sure they're out there. We do have the roving teams going out there daily. Right now we're focusing the same area we were last time, which was near the Greyhound bus station. But we're expanding that footprint because we know CBP is doing street releases in other areas. So we're making sure we're covering those bases. And that'll be evolving as we continue.
And again, it's not that we're looking at, we want to make sure there's people not on the street, but if they opt to stay there and be there, just like the chief said, we want to make sure that they're taken care of.
Yeah, OEM has said federal government should do something similar like what they did with the Afghan refugees at Fort Bliss. Do you believe this could be a solution?
I do think it would help. I think it's an all-hands-on-deck effort. We're seeing unprecedented numbers passing through being apprehended on a daily basis, unprecedented numbers passing through the El Paso community itself, and with that, there has to be some other way. We know that the migration laws are lacking the times. They haven't been changed in decades, let's say. And with that, the people who are passing through are coming here to make a better way for themselves. And so the federal government, I feel, should step up and assist them with those efforts. Coming through without the ability to work right away, coming through without the ability to get to where you're going, is not a fair start. And so they have to look at other options or policy changes to address it.
Si alguien puede dar un comentario en español, ya sea el alcalde o algún representante acerca de la situación.
Enrique, can you provide a summary of Chief's comments?
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Muy buenos días. Sí. Bueno, como decía el jefe de Agostino, estamos viendo ahora un número sin precedentes en comparación con lo que habíamos visto antes en la región. estamos hablando ahora de 2.500 aprehensiones diarias aproximadamente, y esto conlleva a 1.200 personas que están siendo liberadas hacia los albergues que están aquí en la ciudad, hacia las ONGs. Esto no incluye las 200 a 500 personas que están siendo liberadas en las calles al día. Entonces estamos hablando de 1.600 a 1.700 personas que están siendo liberadas aquí en la región del Paso, en la ciudad del Paso, lo cual es un aumento considerable, y por lo tanto continuamos con la planeación para poder tratar la necesidad de procesamiento, la necesidad de traslados y la necesidad de albergue de emergencia. Cuando estamos hablando de albergue, estamos hablando de un tipo diferente de estadía. Sabemos que la gente no se quiere quedar aquí en la región del Paso, están meramente transitando hacia otras partes del país. Entonces, lo que se está buscando es meramente poder establecer una forma en la que estas personas que están en las calles se puedan alojar en lo que ellos se mueven hacia otras partes de la ciudad, y para eso tenemos también las operaciones hoteleras, que es la que también establecimos la vez pasada, y se están estableciendo de nuevo para poder asistir a esta gente. Como saben, tenemos también equipos en calle que están buscando, el staff está buscando a las personas, sobre todo en las zonas de aquí del centro, donde sabemos que están siendo liberadas y se están quedando, para poder ofrecerles ayuda, para poder contactarse con sus familiares, para poder tener un albergue temporal en caso de lo que necesiten, y saber cómo llegar a los centros de traslado, que es lo que están buscando. No todo el mundo, la mayoría de hecho no se quiere quedar aquí en la región, no se quiere, tampoco a veces no quieren ir a un hotel, entonces prefieren esperar en algunos de los centros de traslado, como es la estación Greyhound aquí en el centro, para poder esperar el momento en poder salir. Entonces, por eso vemos todavía gente en las calles. Sin embargo, la Oficina de Manejo de Emergencias y la Ciudad del Paso está trabajando en poder también facilitar, cubrir las necesidades básicas que tienen en estos lugares. Se están estableciendo ya baños portátiles, se están estableciendo lavados de manos para esta gente que no se quiere trasladar a un hotel en lo que esperan su camión o su avión, para que puedan estar ellos cubriendo necesidades básicas. De igual manera, se comentaba, se está pidiendo apoyo al gobierno del Estado. Se hicieron solicitudes para poder apoyar con traslados, para poder apoyar con albergues y para poder apoyar con seguridad pública. Como sabemos, en la Ciudad del Paso el Departamento de Bomberos y Policía están apoyando en esas operaciones. Sin embargo, estamos viendo que posiblemente se levante el título 42, lo cual va a traer números que estamos esperando sean el doble o más de lo que estamos viendo en estos momentos, y esto podría requerir que necesitemos más oficiales de seguridad pública en las calles para poder proteger a los migrantes y a la comunidad del Paso. En cuestión económica, entre el tercer y cuarto cuatrimestre se ha gastado 9.52 millones de dólares, de los cuales en octubre se entregaron 2 millones. Esta semana se nos informó que 3.5 millones adicionales fueron identificados ya para ser reembolsados a la Ciudad del Paso. Se sigue en espera, y se nos avisó también el día de ayer que 6 millones más en fondeo avanzado para poder empezar a establecer operaciones se han identificado también, y se está esperando a que se depositen en las cuentas de la Ciudad del Paso para poder continuar operaciones. Una nota más en cuestión de los traslados y en las operaciones de migrantes como las que vimos hace meses. Se está pensando en la necesidad de restablecer esas operaciones. Sin embargo, habría una diferencia. En el caso que estamos viendo ahorita, la gente tiene patrocinadores, tiene familiares, tiene personas que están esperándolos y tienen los medios para moverse. Entonces, ahorita solo estamos contactando, estamos ayudando a la gente a conectarse para poder moverse a sus destinos finales. Sin embargo, con el título 42 siendo elevado, retirado, podríamos empezar a ver muchísimos más números de gente sin patrocinadores, sin medios, que requerirían este apoyo. Entonces, en cuestiones de traslado, el cambio sería que estamos buscando con otras comunidades, con otras agencias, tanto federales como de otras ciudades, poder trasladar a las personas a otros sitios, como por ejemplo Denver o Phoenix, donde hay aeropuertos más grandes, porque sabemos los límites de nuestras capacidades de transporte aquí en El Paso, y de esta manera, al trasladarlos a un lugar con una ciudad más grande, con un aeropuerto mucho más grande, pueden empezar a moverse de manera más sencilla, en vez de lo que estábamos haciendo antes, que era trasladarlos tal vez en viajes que eran a través de la nación entera. Y por el momento eso es todo. Gracias.
Tengo una última pregunta de lo que contabas. Las personas que ahorita no, las pocas personas que hay en las calles que no tienen familiares que los puedan recibir, ¿tienen algún plan para, como mencionaban, cuando se quite lo del título 42, para esas personas que no tengan familia?
Sí, los que no tienen, y ahorita tenemos muchos que sí tienen familia, sí tienen el dinero y sí saben dónde van a ir. Los que no están, les estamos ayudando a donde quieren ir. Y como siempre lo decimos, lo vamos a mandar donde quieren ir. y es lo que estamos haciendo, ayudarle, porque el resto está correcto, que no tienen la familia que van a venir a los Estados Unidos a ver, pero le vamos a ayudar a donde necesitan o quieren ir, o si se quieren quedar aquí, para ayudarles cuando se van a querer quedar aquí en El Paso. Gracias.
Hello. We've seen videos in the past few weeks, one as recent as yesterday, of migrants, possible migrants coming out of manholes. How is this happening? What's the approach to get this under control?
So yes, we've seen numerous videos of people coming through manholes, people running across the border highway up here by UTEP as well. And so those are difficulties with how they're getting through, how they're getting past. We can communicate daily on the regular with our Customs and Border Patrol partners so that they can increase patrols in that area, because these are people that are coming through, and we want to make sure that they're getting census so they know who's entering, and so that they can get them the proper documentation so they can continue their travels.
Alicia Caldwell with the Wall Street Journal. Can you clarify why you haven't declared a state of emergency, given that the city staff has recommended it? I understand repeatedly. I understand you can ask those requests, but as the chief said, if there's no funding stream, the request appears to just go to the wayside. So what's the hesitation or the obstacles? You said it's not possible at the moment in your view, but can you just clarify why that is?
Well, I think it's important to continue to work with all our partners and continue to work, whether it's a state or federal partners. And Senator Blanco told me yesterday when I talked to him that the things that are requested by him and requested by the office we don't need to declare a state of emergency. The federal government, there's been things said that if we declare a state of emergency, we're going to get additional federal funding. That's an incorrect statement. Federal funding, you don't need to declare a state of emergency, and we didn't need to. Mr. Lee from FEMA worked really close with Office of Emergency Management, Chief D'Agostino in my office. The Secretary of Mallorca has worked really close with the city of El Paso. So declaring a state of emergency would not have changed additional funding and would not have changed to where we're at today. And I'm very, again, thankful for the Secretary for providing the funding needed to go forward. And that's important. What we're talking about today, we're moving forward. We're taking care of the community, and it's not on the back of the taxpayers of El Paso. But at the end of today, we will continue to need additional funding moving forward as we see the numbers continue to increase. Go ahead.
Two more questions, please. Is there a threshold at which you will declare an emergency if Title 42 goes away? You get the estimated 5,000 population a day. What's the threshold for you?
There's not if I feel the community is not safe, if I feel our visitors into our country are not safe, then that's when you need to declare it. And at this point, you see it, we all see it, that our community is very safe and that our visitors into our country are continuing to be safe, and we continue to provide a service. And that's important. And I will continue to look at it, and I will continue to look at it and work with the county judge to make sure that that continues to happen within our community.
Nada más si puede hablar sobre el estado, porque no se ha declarado estado de emergencia en español, por favor, alcalde.
La cosa que lo que estamos hablando es porque no lo ha sido. No lo ha sido porque continuamos de trabajar todos juntos con el gobierno federal, con los estados de Texas y continuamos de hacer lo que necesitamos para que todos estén bien en El Paso, todos los que viven en El Paso, los que vienen a visitar El Paso, que están bien. Si en una parte que no van a estar bien y no están a estar seguros, entonces necesitamos a ver qué podemos hacer, pero ahorita lo que ves es que el gobierno federal está trabajando con nosotros, nos ha dado el dinero, nos prometió el dinero que vamos a necesitar para continuar, y preguntamos, trabajamos con ellos y nos están ayudando. Y también la oficina del gobernador, como habló el senador Blanco, con ellos que dijeron que no necesitamos hacer eso, pero nomás tenemos que preguntar por unas cosas para que es posible nos puedan ayudar con lo que necesitamos aquí. Gracias.
And Chief, if you wanted to close out any closing statement.
Lo que dijo el gobernador de las ONGs, ahorita lo dijo en inglés, pero en español, ¿qué opina de que el gobernador vayan a investigar a las organizaciones?
Eso es una cosa que nosotros no sabemos lo que está haciendo ahorita, pero lo vamos, como digo, vamos a trabajar con todos. Y es la cosa muy importante que vamos a trabajar con todos los NGOs, vamos a trabajar con todos que nos están ayudando. Y es una alegación ahorita nomás y no hay nada a decir qué es lo que está pasando.
¿Hay confianza en ellos?
Siempre tenemos confianza. Eso es una cosa muy importante. Y como digo, ahorita la cosa que es muy importante, que nos estamos moviendo para adelante ahorita y para ayudar a la ciudad y hacer lo que necesitamos hacer para prepararnos. Porque es una cosa que está muy importante, que nos debemos preparar si el Title 42 se acaba, qué podemos hacer y qué vamos a hacer. Y la cosa es, todos juntos, no nomás la ciudad, todos juntos que estamos trabajando ahorita, nos estamos preparando juntos. Gracias. With that, I want to thank you all for being here, and we will continue to inform you all and continue to let you know. And I'm very thankful again to Chief DeAgostino and Chief Rodriguez, Mr. Gonzalez, and City Council for really working together. And working together, we'll continue to do what's best, again, for the community of El Paso and for our visitors. And again, I think, Chief, when I talked to him, I said, the important thing is for the community to know that we're moving forward and continue to move forward to do the right thing for El Paso. Thank you again.
Thank you. Chief, did you have any? No.
I'll turn you back on.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you, Mayor, for your comments. I do want to thank Council for being here. Do you all have any words you'd like to say before we wrap up?
Thank you all for being here today. I think it's very important that we all recognize the situation that's happening in El Paso, the crisis, not only for the sake of the migrants, but for El Pasoans. You asked a very important question about people coming out of manholes. You know, I have heard similar concerns from my constituents, and it's very heartbreaking that they have small children and that they're being subjected to this. I have called repeatedly on the mayor to declare a disaster declaration, and it is completely up to him to do so. Doing so will bring additional resources. I do want to clarify that the $3.7 million, it has been promised. We have not yet received it. The $6 million is promised, but we have not yet received it. We're days away from Title 42 being lifted, and I'm not sure what's going to happen if we don't yet receive those fundings. So again, I want to thank everybody for being here. Please keep telling the story about what's going on in El Paso. It's very unfortunate, not just for our community, but for the migrants themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think it's important that promise means we're going to get our money, and it's very disingenuous to say it's promised when we may not get it. We will get our funding from the federal government, and the federal government is our partner, and we're helping the federal government. They're giving us the funding to help us do their job, and that's to protect our community and protect the United States. So when they commit to funding, that funding will be here. Now, do we know that it'll be here tomorrow? No. Do we know that it'll be here before the end of the year? We don't know that, but I can guarantee you that the federal government is a good partner to our community, and the federal government is what the United States of America is made of, and that's who we all have to rely on, our federal partners. If we didn't rely on our federal partners, we don't believe in the loss of the federal government and of the United States of America. Thank you.
Good morning, Joe Molina, City Representative, District 4. I thank you very much for all being here to getting the word out to our community, both in English and Spanish. This isn't the first time the City of El Paso has faced a crisis. I believe the mayor, our city leadership, the chiefs, the Office of Emergency Operations are doing a fantastic job. I personally believe in the process. To your question, sir, de la confianza, yes, we must have confidence and we must continue forward. So how do you handle a crisis? You handle it head on, and that's exactly what we're doing. Thank you.
Good morning, buenos días. Soy Isabel Salcido, la regidora del Distrito 5. I am Isabel Salcido, the district rep for District 5. I don't speak on behalf of the staff nor mayor, but I have been urging to call a disaster declaration. I'm a big proponent in working proactively, whereas reactively, and December 21st is around the corner, and I know that we heard that we can get state resources here on request, and that's not enough for me. That's a request. I want to be prepared so that we better respond fast, efficiently, and deal with this in the best way. And so I still urge the mayor, I know it's to his discretion, but I still urge to have that done. I want to be ready for this. Thank you.
to the community? Would it actually bring in resources? You're talking about being promised versus actually having money here. What would be the difference in declaring with the state? What
There
would
wouldn't
they
be any
bring?
difference if you declare state of emergency. It's still, you're not guaranteed any resources. You're not guaranteed anything. It's still a request of a state of emergency that that we've asked the state. Now, at the end of the day, the state could or will not do. So it's request for services or request state of emergency. It's still requesting the state to come and assist the city of El Paso. So, I mean, it's basically we're in the same situation with no guarantees. But I can tell you that, again, we have great partners, and this has become a partnership that will continue to be, like Representative Molinar says, you have to have faith in the process, and you need to continue to move forward. And it is a crisis. No one can say that it's not a crisis, because it is a crisis, and it's a crisis that we need to continue to work on every day and make sure, again, that our community continues to be safe. And things change daily, and things will continue to change daily, and we got to make sure that we're adaptive and proactive, and we are. Again, thank you again, and I really appreciate you all coming in. And again, I want to thank the council for being here, and for, again, we all need to make sure that one thing everyone sees here that we're all saying is that our community comes first. So thank you again, and may God bless everyone. And if we don't see you again before the holidays, Merry Christmas to all. Happy holidays, but I got a feeling we'll see you again. Thank you.
If I could just add one more thing, sir. I've been to 3 times, sir. Yes, sir.
This is fine. I just wanted to add some clarity to that last question. The mayor is absolutely correct. It doesn't change. You're still requesting resources. What it does change is what I talked about earlier. And so we can ask for resources right now. The state can provide them if they choose to, as long as they have funding stream doing those current operations today. So if they're doing a transportation piece, we can ask for transportation. I'm asking for staffing to help with sheltering. The state is not sheltering migrants. What's the possibilities of getting that? That's the difference. That declaration allows the state to open up additional funding outside of their normal budget. That's the difference right there. So when I ask for these, and we're being proactive for these, that's what we're looking at. We still get an option to request. We'll request. Law enforcement, they do provide. Law enforcement for migration and for crowds and areas, they do provide. So that's something that we hope we can get that request fulfilled. The request for transportation, that's something they're already doing. They're already operational. We're hoping we can get that request fulfilled. The third one, as I talked about, is not in the budget. So that's the difference between a declaration and a simple request. And with that, thank you all for coming.
Does that require going into Operation Lone Star, though, if you do that?